Andrew, you've had an interesting discussion today on the police response to the social unrest, the protests that we've seen ongoing in the wake of the Middle East conflict.
Yes, Kieran. So the New South Wales and Victorian Police Associations are calling for the federal government to pay for the cost of policing what are becoming weekly pro-Palestinian protests, arguing the alternative is seeing police officers not able to man their usual shifts and saying this puts general community safety at risk. Sky News can reveal in a submission to Federal Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, copied to the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, the New South Wales Police Association calls for the federal government to fund extra additional user charger shifts to ensure police resources in local communities are kept at the same level. The association argues the federal government and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese have made clear that the government's key focus is on social cohesion domestically while the war rages in Israel, and the arrangements would mirror others federal and state governments have agreed to in the past. The New South Wales Police Association submission to the Attorney General and Premier argues, quote, all police operations for mass gatherings or providing increased security for communities in relation to the risks arising from the situation in Israel and Gaza should be staffed by police on user charges, shifts or cancelled rest days. It argues the federal government should fund those additional shifts using an agreed process to grant funds to all state and territory police forces equitably and according to their required involvement in such operations. The submission goes on, there are precedents for this model of staffing, policing operations for COVID. In the aftermath of the September 11 attacks, a similar approach was used for police patrols of key infrastructure, and these operations are crucial to prevent violence, vilification and maintain cohesion. The federal government can play an important role in ensuring our police have the resources they need to provide the protection that's needed. And the submission points to statements from federal leaders saying their priority is preventing violence in the Australian community, including recent statements from ASIO boss Mike Burgess and the Prime Minister. I spoke to New South Wales Police Association President Ken Morton about their proposal this morning. Kevin Morton, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You're concerned about the cost in terms of normal policing in terms of these Palestinian protests that are occurring pretty much every weekend in Sydney now and also in Melbourne. Can you take us through what you want the federal government to do and how much of a problem this is?
Yeah, it's an issue for us, and the protests are occurring all up and down the eastern seaboard. New South Wales and Victoria are affected. What we've seen in New South Wales is the use of 3,100 operational shifts that have been dragged out from commands to man these protests. Now, they've done a very good job, our police officers, because we've had very few incidents at those protests, but these are operational shifts that the command can't have. So we're looking for federal funding, similar to what was done during APEC and the border closures, for a user pay type system to have those officers man those protests.
So how does that work? Does that mean the police can then work their normal shifts because they're being paid by the feds for an extra shift?
Yeah, they're hours that the police officer can work over and above what they would normally operationally use.
And what does this mean? How many police, say in New South Wales, are being involved every Sunday in terms of these protests we're seeing every week? And what does it mean in terms of operational policing on other matters?
Yeah, so we've seen a varying response, staffing orders as far as up to 1,000 police attending some of these protests. And these protests aren't getting smaller, they're getting larger. So that staffing orders will only increase. Every operational shift that we use manning those protests is one that can't be used by the commander back where those police officers came from to keep their communities safe.
And you made a submission to the Federal Attorney General Mark Dreyfus on this?
Yes, we've put a submission through to the New South Wales Premier and also to Mark Dreyfus, making him aware of what impact this is having on in New South Wales. And I believe our Victorian counterparts have done the same.
No responses yet?
Haven't got a response from the Attorney General as yet.
Kevin Morton, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the President of the New South Wales Police Association. Wants federal funds to provide for these police who have to staff every weekend these pro-Palestinian protests and Israeli protests as well. On Tuesday night, federal opposition leader Peter Dutton wrote to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese calling on him to, quote, convene an urgent meeting of the National Cabinet to discuss the concerns raised by Australia's Jewish community about their safety following the 7th of October terrorism attacks against Israel. He wrote, "There have been increasing reports of anti-Semitic attacks on Jewish homes, businesses and communities, culminating in last weekend's deliberately provocative and intimidating pro-Palestinian protests in Caulfield, Melbourne and Sydney's eastern suburbs. I further seek your support to secure a statement from the National Cabinet in which the leaders of the Commonwealth and all states and territories confirm their support for Australia's Jewish community, condemn anti-Semitism and declare any attack on Australians for their religious beliefs unacceptable." And we saw that issue dominate that motion, unsuccessful motion, Kieran, by Peter Dutton in the House, breaking up question time there where he was saying that the Prime Minister's not focused enough on that issue.